Austria. Dr. Tamara, the floor is yours. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. And I apologize, I did not manage to get the virtual background to work on my computer. So I will just come to sharing my presentation as soon as possible. So thank you again. Thank you also, Rosa Laura, for her presentation, because she outlined very important background information for me presenting you the Carpathian Convention. And so I'm working, supporting the work of the Secretariat of the Carpathian Convention, which is located in the United Nations Environment Program office in Vienna. And yeah, I will just start going in case I'm currently located in a mountain area. So in case something happens with my internet, I apologize in advance, and I hope that it does work out. So Carpathians at a glance. Well, there are reasons why you have already heard from Rosa Laura how important the mountain regions are. Well, this is specifically a mountain region in Europe that is, as you can see, the longest, most twisted, and the second longest, the largest mountain region in Europe. Carpathian region, you can see that it is shared by 7 countries: Czech Republic, Hungary, Poland, Romania, Serbia, Slovakia, and Ukraine. Of course, different countries have to different extent have mountain regions. In Romania, there are 40% of the mountain regions. In Serbia, maybe a bit less. However, all of these countries did commit to collaborate on the protection and sustainable development of these mountains. They are important because they're providing essential ecosystems, services and goods to about 17 million inhabitants. It's a highly populated region in Central Europe. It's also a very important region with respect to biodiversity. So it has the largest remaining strands of old growth of virgin forests in Europe. It has natural and semi-natural forests. It has very important large carnivore populations. And on the other hand, it is important in terms of cultural heritage. So it has a lot of ethnic minority communities, small communities with their traditions, and it's important to also recognize it and support them. So for these reasons, the 7 countries decided to collaborate on the sustainable development and protection of the Carpathian region. So from 2001, the government of Ukraine made the initiative of approaching the United Nations and asking them to support the discussion between the 7 Carpathian countries and for this collaboration. I might also say that in 2002, this Alpine Carpathian partnership started and was very important. So the support of the Alpine Convention and of the Mountain Partnership was also very important for the creation of this convention. It was adopted in 2003 and entered into force in 2006. So actually this negotiation process was quite, took place quite effectively and efficiently. And in 2006, the first conference of the parties already took place. So the convention is ratified by all 7 Carpathian countries, and it is an important platform for the discussion, for strategies, exchanging the experience, exchanging knowledge. It's also not only a governmental program. It combines or brings together stakeholders from all sectors, from local organizations, non-governmental organizations, from scientific organizations, to the highest level of the government. And as already mentioned, the United Nations Environment Program in Vienna is the Secretariat of the Convention. It supports the parties, kind of a neutral partner that supports the parties and also helps them share experience internationally. The convention is a framework convention, so it combines many articles that are covering all aspects of sustainable development. You can see here a summary. So there are some articles about general provisions, objectives and principles in the convention. There are articles discussing or establishing the institutional setup of how it's working, general standard clause on international agreements. On the other hand, there are specific substantial articles covering different thematic sectors. You can see the range is quite broad, from land resource management, of course, sustainable use of and conservation of biological and landscape diversity, industry and energy, tourism, awareness raising, we have added a climate change article that's also very important in order to support the parties in implementing different national agreements and really focusing, working together on sustainable development of the Carpathian region. Here, just of course, as an outlook, I already mentioned that one of our aims is to help the countries of the Carpathian region to implement international agreements. So of course, sustainable development goals are very important, and we're also focusing the attention of our parties on implementing sustainable development goals. Here are a number that are more directly addressed by the convention. Here you can see how the convention is governed. The main governing body is the Conference of the Parties. This is a meeting on a high level ministerial meeting that happens every 3 years. Here there is a high level segment where decisions are being adopted and signed, and a broader participatory segment where many stakeholders come to present their projects, advocate for certain things, etc. During the Conference of the Parties, also the presidency of the convention is rotating. So every year, every 3 years, one of the countries assumes the presidency of the convention. The current presidency is Poland. Carpathian Convention Implementation Committee is the body supporting the Conference of the Parties. It consists of the focal points of the convention. They are located in ministries, usually ministries of environment or equivalent. During the implementation committee meetings that happens at least once a year, the decisions are being discussed, the different directions of the convention are being discussed, and the decisions are being prepared for the Conference of the Parties. These meetings also open to observers, so experts, scientific experts, NGOs can take part, can also suggest certain discussion topics in collaboration with the Secretariat. And the level further are the working groups of the convention. Here is where the actual work, thematic work, substantial work is being done, discussed, based on every topic. So we have a biodiversity working group on climate change, sustainable tourism, cultural heritage and traditional knowledge, sustainable forests, on transport, on sustainable agriculture and rural development, and on spatial development. The working groups are meeting at different times, so it really depends on the amount of work, on the priorities of the convention. Working group on biodiversity is probably one of the more active ones, because this is one of the really focus of that the convention is working on. And during working groups, there are basically experts that are nominated by the government. And there are also observers that are scientific experts, different international organizations and local experts, local groups, action groups that are present and that are helping shape the decisions pertaining to this specific thematic area. Finally, there are several protocols developed from the convention. These protocols are integrated, are legal documents that are integrated into law of the countries, and they are required to implement them. Each protocol is generally supported also by strategic plans and action plans that are helping the parties to implement them. In case you have any questions, just let me know if you don't understand something. Of course, the convention is actually working because of very active involvement of stakeholders from the local to the regional level. Here, this is just an example of the number of meetings happened between 2017 and 2020. On the other hand, there are many events and meetings where the Secretariat doesn't take place because these are hosted or organized by our local partners. And these meetings are then somehow reported during different events to us. Their results, recommendations are then integrated to the decision, so from the bottom to the higher level. And just to illustrate how the convention is working, I thought it would be nice to go through some of the decisions so that you can see how they are influencing the direction of the convention and basically determining our work. So with the last conference of the parties took place last year in November. It was an online conference due to the pandemic. During this conference, the presidency of Hungary basically passed on the presidency of the convention to Poland, and every presidency that comes on declares its priorities for the period for the 3 years. And the priorities of the Polish presidency were to promote the EU accession to the Carpathian Convention, and very importantly, closer collaboration with the local and the regional level. And you can see that it was very highly attended, and quite many decisions were actually adopted. And I will just show you a number of them to explain how they determine the work of the convention. So an important decision was a new decision introduced, emphasizing the importance of the priority of the Polish presidency. The second priority focused on engaging the local communities and the local authorities in implementing the convention. You have heard already from the previous speaker that actually the population of the mountain regions, they are the key. Actually, their well-being, livelihoods are very important. This is one of the reasons why we're working in the mountain regions, but also their knowledge, their inputs are extremely important. At this point, the convention is working with a number of NGOs and organizations on the local level, but we want to make sure that all regional authorities and actors are represented. And then there is a continuous dialogue between the convention secretariat and the parties and the local actors at the local level. So this is one of the reasons why this decision is there. You can see that it's encouraging local authorities and stakeholders to engage, and also asking the parties and the secretariat to facilitate that. So this gives us now the direction to act based on these decisions and to create projects, to establish different cooperation efforts on the local level. Another decision that shows what we're working on is welcoming the upcoming UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration and calling upon the parties to make strong commitments to achieve transformational ecosystem restoration. So this shows how we are trying to help our parties to implement rather international global initiatives and agreements. This is a very important decade, contributing also to the Sustainable Development Goals, and we're trying to support our parties in participating, contributing to it from the Carpathian region. Another important initiative with respect to biological diversity is implementation of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, which is a process under the Convention on Biological Diversity. In the Carpathian Convention, we have a trilateral memorandum of cooperation between the Convention of Biological Diversity, the Alpine Convention, and the Carpathian Convention. This is a very important collaboration mechanism for the two mountain regions or mountain conventions and the Global Convention on Biological Diversity to work together to promote both the voice of the mountain regions in the convention, and at the same time helping these mountain regions and the parties of these two regional mechanisms to implement the global mechanism. Another example is the new decision that we introduced on strengthening science policy practice interface and collaboration with scientific networks. As we all know, decisions need to be made based on robust evidence. Important to this effect is of course scientific research and collaboration with the scientific networks. And it's very important that the knowledge, scientific knowledge, is shared and relevant for policy and practice. For this reason, we decided to support collaboration between the convention and its partners and the scientific network that has been established in 2008. The scientific network S4C, Science for the Carpathians network. This is a network that unites scientists from the Carpathian countries and internationally who are working in the Carpathian region. And we want to make sure that we work closely together with them in order to integrate scientific knowledge, local traditional knowledge, as well as important policy information to make sure that the scientific research is aimed at solving the problems of the Carpathian region. Another important decision is on adopting the International Action Plan on the conservation of large carnivores and ensuring ecological connectivity. So in the Carpathian region is very important. One of the reasons it's very important is because of its large carnivore population. So the lynx, the wolf, and the brown bear are the three kind of big important species, and collaborating among the countries to support these carnivores are very important. And we're supporting the countries also on the scientific level, on the practical level of how to do it. Another example is sustainable forest management. So you can see that here a lot of the work is done on inventory on virgin forests in the Carpathians, on identifying where these are the forests of important significance and also protecting them. Illegal logging is a very challenging issue because it's a politically charged issue, and we need to still try to address it because unfortunately it is a problem in the Carpathian region, in some regions and countries more than in the other. So you can also see that how we're trying to integrate, still address illegal logging, but somehow integrate it into the language of the decision that is acceptable by all the partners. Of course, something I should have mentioned before is that these decisions are negotiated before they are adopted. So every partner country of the convention has to weigh in on it and has to agree with the final text of the decisions. Here is another example. So now we're dealing with sustainable transport. We have a protocol on sustainable transport, and now a joint strategic action plan for implementation of this transport protocol has been developed and has been adopted. You see that this action plan is working on reducing of the negative impact of existing transport infrastructure on ecological connectivity, very important. Next is that ecological connectivity needs to be taken into account when developing further infrastructure. Here we're talking about different passes, green bridges, etc., or perhaps avoiding to build certain infrastructures going through some highly sensitive areas. And finally, also important, fostering collaboration of different stakeholders in the field of spatial planning. It's very important, of course, that different sectors are represented when planning transport infrastructure. This example is on sustainable tourism. So in fact, encouraging further collaboration within the Carpathian Sustainable Tourism Platform. So we have decided in terms of sustainable tourism to try to decentralize developments in sustainable tourism and establish a Carpathian Sustainable Tourism Platform that basically is based on centers in the 3 countries in order to help them work more closely with the local stakeholders and take more responsibility when it comes to sustainable tourism. Here is an example of a couple of projects, more recent projects that were implemented by the convention partners. These both were focused on training for ecotourism and how to better manage and market local and ecotourism products. So in terms of tourism, a lot of the work has been done through projects. Now we're trying to have better coordination through this sustainable tourism platform and collect better exchange practices between the partners. Climate change in the mountain regions is a very important and pressing issue. The mountain communities are extremely vulnerable to climate change, while mountain ecosystems just as well. This is one of the reasons why in the Carpathian countries, we also decided to work together on addressing climate change. So from 2014, you see that there has been a strategic agenda on adaptation to climate change in the Carpathian region. We're also collaborating with the Alpine region with this respect. You can see that we have now the long-term vision till 2030 towards combating climate change in the Carpathians. So it has been adopted at the previous conference of the parties. And now we need to help the countries implement that. You can see that there is also encouraging of assessing the impact of climate change on the Carpathian forests and ecosystems, but also identifying and promoting nature-based solutions for climate change mitigation and adaptation that for the Carpathian region would be very relevant. We're also helping the countries or encouraging the countries through decisions to strengthen regional cooperation on climate change, and also importantly, mainstreaming climate change into the different sectors. So here, the Carpathian Convention can play a role because we do address different sectors, so we can encourage collaboration, at least at the conventional level, between the different working groups, different professionals working on different sectors, so they understand the importance of climate change and integrate it into their work. Very important work that we're doing is on awareness raising, education, and public participation. This is, of course, the core of any participatory governance mechanism. If we want that it works, then awareness is very important. Integration and consideration of different types of knowledge from the local level to the regional level is very important. During the previous presidency of Hungary over the convention, they have indicated advancing education for sustainable development as their priority, because they've noticed that this was a gap in the implementation of the convention beforehand. And also because of the global processes. So the UNESCO now adopted the framework for education for sustainable development till 2030. And we want to support our countries in implementing this framework, considering its relevance for the Carpathian region. So we have in 2019 held the first Carpathian seminar on education for sustainable development, where actors from all Carpathian countries came together. It is very often an ignored or undervalued sector. And it's important to also raise its awareness, or also explain on the governmental level how education is linked with sustainable development. So currently we have a project called Strengthening the Education Sustainable Development Network in the Carpathian Convention via Science Policy Practice Interface, supported by Germany. And through this project, we're hoping to close the gaps and build or develop, strengthen a network of actors working on education for sustainable development in the convention, in order to more closely link the convention with these educational initiatives and basically integrate a lot of information and content that we are helping produce in the convention with formal and non-formal education in the Carpathian countries. Finally, of course, this is not done in isolation. We're working very closely with our local stakeholders, but there are also a host of international stakeholders, agreements, organizations, partners, donors who help us work together with us to help us achieve this work in the Carpathians. So partnerships are extremely important for our work. And with that, I thank you very much for your attention, and I'm open in case you have any questions.
Thanks a lot, dear Tamara. Excellent presentation, very informative, and also saving time, giving more time for other speakers. Thanks a lot. So dear colleagues, let me introduce the next speaker.